Hi, everyone. Welcome to our first evening webinar, the Young Onset Speaker Series. My name is Emma. I'm a Client Service Coordinator with Parkinson Association of Alberta, and I'll be moderating the webinar. If you have any questions during the webinar, please enter them in the chat below. I'll get it started for us, and then you're also welcome to unmute yourself and ask questions as they come. So we can do that. Just as a disclaimer, this webinar will be recorded. All of the information provided in the videos by Parkinson Association of Alberta, its featured speakers, is furnished strictly for educational and entertainment purposes only. The service is not intended to be diagnostic, prescriptive, or replace the relationship, advice, and/or care of your physician. General questions about symptoms, treatments, available medication, complementary and alternative healthcare therapies, and current research will be fielded. Tonight, I am happy to welcome Tanisha Commerce. She is a creative writer, competitive athlete, and tourism enthusiast. A self-proclaimed nerd, she fell in love with the complexities of financial planning and the personal relationships she builds with clients when she began her practice in 2010. Tanisha is a certified financial planner, a registered retirement consultant, and has taught several classes with SAIT, the School of Business here in Calgary. She worked with the Financial Advisors Association of Canada to develop textbooks and other content for the National CFP course material. Today, she runs a financial literacy agency and has managed over $35 million of client assets. When Tanisha isn't promoting good money sense or corralling professionals for research, you can find her in the mountains, visiting beaches, or with her nose buried in a book. So thank you for joining us tonight, and we'll let you get started.
Thank you, Emma. All right, guys, I am really looking forward to be here. I want to start by saying that, as you noticed in the intro there, I have taught, so I'm not a big fan of PowerPoint, and I really want this to be as interactive as possible. I'm going to give us breaks after each one of these sections to get you to ask questions if you'd like. And as I said, I want to keep this interactive so that it isn't me just speaking at you, but hopefully a bit more of a conversation. So I'm going to get started with the disability tax credit. The way I'm doing this too, just also as notes for you guys, is this isn't a Word document so that I can write notes as you guys come up with questions, or if there's more important things that you want in here. I'm going to publish this afterwards so that Emma can send out the document. All the links to the web pages I'm pulling up are in here so that you can go back and refer to them afterwards for your own information. All right. So let's start with the disability tax credit. The reason I'm starting there is because Emma told me that a lot of you don't think you qualify, you don't think you need it, et cetera, et cetera. Listen, free government money is free government money. So the first thing about the disability tax credit is that it is non-refundable. So that means it doesn't actually give you cash in your pocket, but it does reduce the amount of taxes you owe. And it's a pretty significant amount. So when it comes down to the maximum disability amount, you can actually reduce your taxes by $8,600. I'll make this a bit bigger. It looks like you guys are. All right. So you can actually reduce your taxes by basically almost a little bit more than $8,500. And if you are a person under age 18, or, obviously you have somebody in the house that's under 18 that is disabled, that amount includes or increases by about $5,000. So pretty significant, again, in terms of savings. Your eligibility is not that limited, okay? So there's a big long form to go through, but what I wanted to point out is that the disability tax credit is available for anyone who experienced a prolonged impairment, so something that's basically gonna last for a lifetime, or for 12 months or more, or there is a cumulative effect of limitations. So the accumulation is a really important part. If there are a couple of different categories, for example, that you qualify under when you are filling in the forms for the government, then you would qualify in general. A couple of good examples here that I liked. Jerry can walk 100 meters, but he has to take time to recuperate. He can carry out mental functions, but he can only concentrate on one topic or two topics at a time. The cumulative effect, that's the important part, is equivalent to being unable or taking an inordinate amount of time in one impairment category. For this reason, Jerry in this case would actually qualify for the DTC. I want to bet that the vast majority of you guys qualify. So there's no real reason not to put through an application for the disability tax credit. As a story example for myself, I had a client many years ago who actually ended up qualifying for the disability tax credit because of a stutter. So that is, I would say, probably less of an impairment than Parkinson's eventually will be for you. So applying for a DTC is a bit of a no-brainer in my opinion. The actual application form, again, I've included links for all of this, it's basically a big long certificate that you get to fill in with the help of your doctor. So your doctor would go through and start looking at medical things such as your vision, speaking capabilities, hearing capabilities, walking, and so on and so forth. So this is entirely your doctor that's going to be taking care of this. There's one page I wanted to show you guys in particular: feeding, blah, 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 dressing, mental functions. So mental functions, and there's quite a few pages worth of mental functions, as well as cumulative effect of significant limitations. So again, please don't feel afraid to fill in this form. You can apply for and qualify for the disability tax credit with things such as bipolar disorder, for example. So it doesn't have to be something so severe that you literally cannot function in order to qualify for this tax credit. And I personally am of the belief that about $9,000 in tax savings out of the government hands and in yours is probably a benefit. As I said, the form itself is not one you're going to fill in. This is something that you bring to your doctor to fill in for you. Your doctor does not make the decision as to whether or not you qualify. I've heard this a couple times from another client. She was trying to get this done for her kids who had autism, and the doctors kept refusing to fill it in. This is not the doctor's purview. This is the government that's going to decide. So you have every right to go through and find the right doctor for you who's willing to go through this and fill in this information and then apply.
Which one, the doctor, the family doctor or the specialist?
Honestly, it could be your family doctor. Yes. Your neurologist might know more, but select the practitioner that applies to you: medical doctor, audiologist, nurse practitioner, optometrist, speech language pathologist, psychologist, medical doctor. That's really all you guys are looking for.
He'll ask for money.
I mean, sorry, you're going to have to ask the doctor themselves. I mean, I would assume that it's probably covered under the government of Alberta unless they are charging for visits, but I suspect that you could probably go in free of charge.
No. He'll ask for money, $160.
So then $160 for your doctor.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I will continue on. I wanted to say, fill out the form. This is an important detail. You guys can actually claim back 10 whole years worth of the disability tax credit. So from the date you would have qualified. Obviously, your doctor, again, would make that determination with, obviously, the help of the government to decide at what point this disability would have qualified. Again, going back to the example of the individual that I worked with that had a speech impediment, that speech impediment was obviously with him for life. So he was able to claim back 10 whole years worth of disability tax credit, which is going to be calculated on an annual basis per their form. So 2021 would be 8,662, 2020 you'd get 8,500, and so on and so forth. So pretty significant savings, in my opinion. Any questions there? Okay, so the other thing is you can appeal if necessary. Again, it's a government form that goes through multiple doctors. Well, you go through your doctor and then you send it into the government and they go through their process. It's all bureaucracy. Sometimes it's just about getting the right person, honestly, if you guys have any experience with submitting paperwork. Sometimes it's about getting the right doctor. Sometimes it's about a combination, hitting the right day. So don't be afraid to make multiple submissions. And of course, over the years, if you do find your symptoms, I guess, becoming worse, then you would obviously have the opportunity to apply again, refill in the information. The government isn't going to decline you again because they declined you, let's say, 2 years ago. This is really a matter of you trying to get yourself a little bit more in savings. The other reason you're going to want the disability tax credit is for the registered disability savings plan. So I'll go back to some of that information in a minute. The Registered Disability Savings Plan is something that has a ton of government grants. So you can basically get up to on the base level, I'm going to go with imagining you guys are making good money, at least $1,000 every year in grants. Free money from the government. You put in $1,000, the government puts in $1,000. It's pretty significant in my opinion, the maximum being up to 70 grand. Free money, you should take it, and you can only qualify for the RDSP on the occasion that you have already qualified for the DTC. So this is step number one, and then afterwards you can qualify, as I said, for the Registered Disability Savings Plan. There are a number of miscellaneous sort of federal deductions. I just wanted to mention really briefly. Sorry, can I move this? Yeah, all right. You can claim a number of different disability deductions. I'm not going to go into all of them, but as I said, I've included the list for you so that you can review them. We started with the tax credit. There is the Canada Caregiver Credit, which would apply to your spouses, your children, whomever is taking care of you. Childcare expenses, disability support, amount for eligible dependents. You might get extra tuition and education amounts. There are some home accessibility expenses that you can claim. The Government of Canada actually has a really nice and tidy, their website's not as bad as you think it is. It is pretty easy to navigate, and it's got a lot of information for what you can use. If you are already working with an accountant, then that's very easy to go back to your accountant and say, hey, what potential credits can I claim? What deductions can I claim in order to save myself on taxes? Emma, I see that there are a couple of questions in the chat. This is a really good time if there are any additional questions we haven't addressed.
We actually have a guest neurologist who's joining us for the second portion of the webinar, and she just let us know that physicians don't get paid to do the government forms, and they are quite a lot of work. She said people with mild disease do not meet the criteria on the form. So if you are interested in the disability tax, I would definitely talk to your family doctor or your neurologist about it and see if you think you might be eligible.
Perfect. It's a good context. Thank you. All right. So Canada Pension Plan disability benefits really quickly here. This is only available if you are prevented from working regularly at your job. So you can apply for CPP disability, but you basically have to be completely out of work at this point. So this is sort of an extreme option at the later end of your working career, in which you can now qualify for financial support through the government. I had a quick list of numbers for you, but the maximum that you can qualify for, there it is. The maximum that you can qualify for CPP disability is going to be $1,457 before age 65. And then when you retire, it's going to be $524 per month after the fact. So please know also for CPP in general, if you are collecting, you cannot collect more than the maximum. So in some cases, people qualify for widower's pension. Usually the widower's pension is really all I can think of. Spousal support, you won't be able to qualify for more than the $1,427. That's your maximum. And I'm going to write really quick notes of doctors don't get paid for paperwork. Thank you. All right. Next up, qualifying for insurances. So long-term and short-term disability. The first one is personal contracts. I'm going to glance over that. I don't know if any of you have applied for long-term disability contracts in the past. Chances are at this point you won't qualify for them, but if you already have them, then what you want to do is contact your insurance broker or your insurance agent. If you don't have a broker anymore, you can still always call the company directly and they will be able to help you. Long-term disability through a personal contract kicks in usually if you are unable to work again full-time, or in some cases, if you have a clause on your contract that allows for partial disability, you may be able to work half-time and then receive half a benefit. But either way, money in is money in, especially if you've been paying for a personal insurance contract. The next bit is probably much more common, is your work or group contracts. So if you at your place of employment have a disability benefit that's available, as I said, through your general group benefits, this disability benefit will kick in once you are unable to work. So it won't pay you while you're still going to the office. It won't pay you while you're working part-time. This is going to pay you once you are out of the door. Short-term disability and long-term disability work very similarly, except that short-term disability is your first 3 months effectively, kind of through that EI period, usually when you lose a job, and that will pay 66% of your previous income. After this 3-month period, your long-term disability kicks in, and this will carry out until age 65. The important things about group plans is that after a certain period of time, if they can put you on CPP disability, they will. So let's say you earn, for real round numbers here, $10,000 a month. You would qualify to receive $6,600 approximately through your group plan. After a few years, not even a year or two, if they can put you onto CPP disability, then you would be receiving this amount here, the $1,457 from the government, and the remaining amount from your disability providers. Your group contracts, 9 times out of 10, are going to be tax-free. Any CPP that you receive from the government is going to be taxable. Any questions there? All right. So moving on, we'll talk about Alberta benefits really quickly. This is, again, going back to that that disability tax credit. If you have any assets in the registered disability savings plan, they don't count. So you won't have to worry about losing benefits or being limited in terms of what you qualify for. The AISH is entirely dependent on your financials, entirely. So unfortunately, you have to have at least $100,000 or less in assets overall. This includes anything in RRSPs, TFSAs, et cetera, except the RDSP again. If once you are receiving AISH, if you receive a gift, I hear this all the time, that people are concerned that an inheritance or something of that ilk will ruin their access to the AISH. All you need to do is make sure that you're investing anything that doesn't qualify within 1 year. So if you get that money invested, and as I said, it was an inheritance, a gift, etc., then it's not going to reduce your overall AISH. Show you a couple of government pages here. So AISH will provide you with a few different things, such as a living allowance. Let me make this a bit bigger. Living allowance, modified living allowance. They might put you up in private rooms, etc. Some children benefits, some health benefits for prescription drugs, etc. The financial amounts, living allowance is about $1,685. Modified allowance, if it's just personal, is $322. The application is, again, very lengthy, but it is not quite the same as the disability tax credit, because as you can see here, instead of these being medical questions, a lot of these are financial questions. What income do you get from investments? What income do you have from life insurance, for example, CPP? All of these questions are what AISH is looking into, because they are really just looking for your financial position. So it's a little less accessible than the disability tax credit or a lot of the other benefits. There are some post-secondary grants available. So if any of you guys are thinking about a second career, or you have a second win in you and you want to learn something new, do please look into any potential grants available, because they do have some specific ones for education. Now, talk to a social worker. So on top of the disability tax credit and AISH and all of that, I get questions all the time about what other benefits are available. How else can the government help me? Honestly, your best person every single time is going to be a social worker, because a social worker, that's all they do all day, every day, is providing information and helping their clients, Albertans, to connect with the right department, the right bureaucracy, get all their paperwork in line. If you talk to a health planner, if you talk to your doctor, whomever, everybody is going to point you in the direction of a social worker. So if you have any questions, that's the place to go. Any questions on those notes, guys? Emma? Nothing?
Nothing yet.
Okay. All right, so registered disability savings plans. Now we're going to talk about this. Now we're going to get into my real area of expertise, which is investing and saving and planning. So with the RDSP, first thing that's most important is that you must be under the age of 60. And the reason for this is that at age 60, you have to start withdrawing. If you guys are familiar with RRSPs and RIFs, which I will again talk about in a few minutes, RDSPs do basically have a lifespan. So you can start putting money in, it will all end up in this really nice little bucket where everything stays in the bucket, okay? You get to invest inside. That is very important. Be cautious how you invest. An RDSP is entirely on you. So you could invest it in cryptocurrency, in the stock market, and you could lose all of it. Or you could invest in GICs, you can leave it in cash. It's not exactly what you want to do, but again, we will talk about that in a second. Your maximum lifetime contribution is $200,000. This is huge. You can hide a ton of money in the RDSP. And when I say hide, I mean money that's in the RDSP is not taxed as it's growing. So you can just leave it alone. You won't be charged tax on interest income, on dividend income, on capital gains. All of it's protected. And as I mentioned, anything that's in the RDSP is exempt from any financial thresholds or financial checklists that any of your other benefits are going to be looking for. So the RDSP is a huge benefit. Now, there is an important rule of 10 years. So any money that you put in, those grants that you're receiving, you do not want to have you do not want to pull the money out within 10 years because they will proportionately take back the grants. So this is kind of one of those set it and forget it and leave it for the long term. I'll show you some quick pages really quickly here. So 8 things to know about the RDSP. The beneficiary is going to be the person with the disability. So the person receiving the money is going to be the beneficiary of the account. The plan holder can be anyone, really. So it could be yourself, holding it for yourself as the beneficiary. It could be a spouse. It could be a parent. There are almost no limits exactly to who opens the RDSP on whose account, on whose behalf. You can also open an RDSP at basically any institution these days. They've only been around since 2008, 2009. Most financial planners, most investment institutions aren't as familiar with them as they are, say, the RRSP or RESP. But as I said, they're an absolutely vital tool for anybody who qualifies for the disability tax credit. Contributions can be made again to age 59. The important thing, as I mentioned, that rule of 10 is you can only receive grants till age 49. And this is the government saying, okay, you can put money in, we will give you grants until you're about 50. Then you got 10 years, don't touch it. And then you have to start pulling it out once you hit 60. So other thing I wanted to mention, I should just as an aside, this is not like the RRSP. You will not receive a deduction for your contributions. So there's nothing special about the contributions themselves other than, as I said, once you put the money into the RDSP, it will not qualify under a lot of your benefits thresholds, which is the important part. In terms of contributions, anybody effectively can make a contribution. You don't have to be the plan holder. So if you have written permission, you can have an aunt, an uncle, a friend put money into the RDSP. The other thing is that parents, grandparents can also transfer over RRSPs to their children or grandchildren when they pass away. So if you have family members who are trying to do estate planning for you, which is very common, you can have them name your RDSP as the beneficiary directly for their RRSPs. They name you and then you put it directly into your RDSP. And that helps protect a lot of the tax consequences because your RDSP is tax sheltered as well. What else did I want to mention? Government grants. Oh, any questions so far before I jump into grants?
We had a couple questions.
Sure.
So someone is asking where to access a social worker. I don't know. Do you want to answer that or do you want me to take that one?
You should probably take that one.
Okay. Depending on your neurologist, they might have one that's in office at their neurology unit and you can access one there. Your family doctor or neurologist would be able to make a referral to a social worker in the community, or you can always give the Parkinson Association a call and we can see if we can help find someone for you. The next question is AISH considered household income or assets? And then the second part, if you're receiving group disability benefits, would you likely qualify for AISH?
Sorry, one more time. What was that question?
Is AISH considered household income or assets?
Oh, the AISH itself, no, would not be your income or assets. Let's go back to that form. AISH application. So what they're going to be looking for is, so you got all your bank accounts in here, even vehicles, home principal residence, annuities, etc. Support, alimony, workers' compensation benefits, but the AISH itself is not including itself. Does that make sense? Is that the question?
I think the question is when you're applying, do you put in your information and your spouse's information if you have one? And it does look like there's a space for spouse on the form.
Yes, it's usually almost every single benefit ever is looking at family income, which we will talk about also in terms of grants, because what they are, tax consequences, personal government grants, here it is. Because what they are looking for here is also the family income. So family income being whomever is in the household together. So if you and your spouse file your taxes together, then you and your spouse are going to be on all of the paperwork together.
Okay, makes sense. Perfect. You somewhat answered this question. They're asking, where do you recommend opening an RDSP? Their bank said they wouldn't do it.
Oh, which bank, if I can ask? Anyway, but while you're asking that, basically most institutions. So as far as I know off the top of my head, BMO will do it, RBC will do it, I think. Some of the institutions won't if they're a little bit smaller or a little pickier. If you guys need me to after the fact, when I finish these notes, I will include a specific list of institutions.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And then the last one here, do you pay taxes when you pull the money out of the RDSP when you turn 60?
Yes, excellent question. Only partially. So the RDSP actually works a lot like the RESP. So if you guys are familiar with that, what happens is your original contributions are tax-free, but any additional growth or grants are considered income. And the reason the government does it this way is that basically you get your money back for free because you already paid taxes on them now, right? So you're earning money, you put the money in, you don't pay tax on it. Then it grows. The government allows it to grow tax-free the whole way. This may not seem like much of a benefit if you have to pull it on the other side when you're withdrawing. But the reason that this is a benefit is that usually A, your income is a lot lower in retirement, and B, the value of having deferred taxation year over year over year means that all of the growth is going to be bigger than it would have been otherwise. So if you imagine, if you guys remember back to math class, the effective compound interest, you're earning 5% on something, but every single year you have to give up a percent of that 5% to the government. Well, you're really only keeping 4. Now, in the case of the RDSP, you're going to keep that whole 5% on top of itself every single year until the end when you start to withdraw. Does that make sense? Let's go back to withdrawals, just because you guys are asking me questions on it anyways. So withdrawals don't affect other government benefits, just as an FYI, including HST credits or anything like that. As I mentioned, if you are pulling money out for less than 10 years, you are going to have an assistance holdback. So basically any of the grants that you've been paid are going to be clawed back. So you don't want to do it. Rule of 10, you put the money in the RDSP and you do not touch it. In terms of tax consequences, again, investment earnings that are withdrawn are going to be taxable, and only the grants and bonds within the 10 years. Because basically the government's saying, okay, if you're pulling this out now, within that 10-year rule, we're going to count it as income because it's government income. You know, you're basically getting a freebie here. However, after the fact, that is all tax-free.
We've got 2 more questions on the RDSP.
Sure, yeah.
There's some good ones here. So someone says that they are turning 50 can they access the grants for the last few years?
Oh man, that's really on the line. Let me see. I'm pretty sure the last available year is literally, 49. Until the end of the year, the beneficiary turns 49. So that's going to be your last year, and it's going to be in that calendar year. So if you turn 49 January 1st, you have all year to make that contribution and still get that grant. If you turn 49 on December 31st, same thing. By the time we hit 2023, let's imagine, then you will no longer qualify. So if you're 50 already, unfortunately, you won't get any of the grants. Now, the thing is, if you wanted to, if you qualify, you can still make contributions, because as a reminder, you must be under the age of 60, but you can still contribute. So you wouldn't get the government grants, but the benefit here is the tax-free growth. So it's almost like an extension of, let's say, a TFSA, except that you're going to have to pay on the government growth at the pay on growth, but you wouldn't collect grant, and you would only pay on growth on withdrawal. So it's basically a tax shelter if you have exhausted all of your other tax shelters. Does that make sense? Answer that question?
I think so, yeah. There's another one here. What is preventing someone from asking the public for donations to the RDSP? Similar to GoFundMe, but the money would be submitted right into that saving plan.
I don't know. That is a really good question. I have never thought of that before. I would suspect, because what I was reading is that you effectively need to have somebody, you need to give written permission to somebody to make contributions. I would suspect if you just wanted to collect gift money and then put it into your own RDSP, there's nothing wrong with that. That's not gonna trigger any alarms.
Okay, thanks.
All right, anything else, Emma?
Nope, that's it for now. I say that, but then some more questions will come. But
of course, which I mean, the RDSP, as you're saying, not a lot of people know about it, and they really should. I'm surprised that there are still some institutions that don't do it, but because it is such a specialty account, I do recall back in the day, this is like now in the early 2010s, there were only a handful of institutions in Canada that did it. Now it's much more prevalent, but again, for the financial industry, a tool like an account like this that's only been around since 2008 is still pretty new. So they're still working on it. All right, we've talked about rolling things over. Let's get into government grants a bit more, because I want to make sure that you guys understand how this works. It's super, super cool. All right, so family income again. The important bit is, and as per usual, the government makes things very complicated. This amount increases every single year with inflation. So Get Smarter About Money is the Ontario Securities Commission. These guys are a pretty solid authority to refer to, but these numbers are going to be updated and the amount will be slightly larger with inflation. So the amount might be 92,000, 93,000. I wouldn't worry about it more than that. So what'll happen if you are earning more, I'll just start with the simple part. If you're, as a family, earning more than $92,000, on the first $1,000, for every dollar, you're going to get $1. So as I said, you put $1,000 in, the government gives you $1,000. Nice and easy. Very, very simple. For families making under $91,000 or 92, let's call it, on the first $500, you're going to get 300%. So basically, you put in $500, the government gives you $1,500. That is significant. On the next $1,000, the government will give you $2 for every dollar contributed, i.e. $2,000. So the total amount, if you are putting in $1,500 into this account, you will receive $3,500. Very, very simply, it adds up so quick. So all you need to be doing, if we're going to do the math on this, because I love monthlies, if we take 1,000 divided by 12, so if your family makes more than $92,000 together, all you need to do is put away $83 a month. If your family makes less than that, all you need to be doing is putting away $125 a month in order to get $3,500 from the government every single year. So that means at the end of 1 year, you would have $5,000 in this account, having done nothing at all except saved $125 a month. It's pretty significant. I wish everyone knew about this and that everyone was on it sooner. So the next bit is there are also a disability savings bond, but this is specifically geared to families who are making less money. So that's why I focused on the first bit. If your family is making $30,000 or less, the beautiful part about the savings bond is that there are absolutely no requirements to put anything in. You open an RDSP account. That's it. All you need to do is open it, and the government will throw money in there. So the amount of a bond for a family making $30,000 or less is the government will put in $1,000 every year. If you're between 30 and 45, it's $1,000 on a prorated basis. That's the best example from the OSC. It is possible, like you can do the math, it's super convoluted, but at the end of the day, what you need to know is that it'll be $1,000 kind of decreasing up to that maximum of 45. So if you as a family are making $45,000 or more, then you're not going to receive the bond. I'm going to touch on the whole family income thing really quickly. If you are living at home with your parents, for example, you're in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s for that matter, your parents' income or your other family, like your relatives' income doesn't matter. What we're talking about when we're referring to family income is you and your spouse on your tax form. So this would be only, as I said, again, literally only you and your spouse, common law, married, whatever. Those are the only people that are going to count for family income. So if you happen to be 30 and you are living with your parents and they are paying for absolutely everything and they might make $200,000 a year, it doesn't matter that you are making 10 grand a year, occasionally stopping in at the library to do some part-time work. That is going to count as your family income. So you will qualify under the 30 and you will get all of the grants, which at this point, just reminding you, between the 35 and this, it could be literally $4,500 every year from the government in grants and bonds. Any questions there, or is that pretty clear?
I think that one's pretty clear. Yeah.
Cool. So this is carry forward again. All right, I love these rules. You can go back up to 10 years. So this is the same thing like with your taxes. Basically the government in general, let's just call it the rule of 10. For taxes, going backwards, if you want to qualify for the disability tax credit, that's 10 years worth of back taxes that they will apply it to. Same thing for your grants and bonds, 10 years back worth of disability grants and bonds. Now, the thing that's important about this is that there's a maximum of $10,500 per year. So what this means is that you cannot just dump 100 grand in there and expect them to pay absolutely everything to catch up. What you would want to do to play this properly is to put in $10,500 in 1 year so that you can get the 10,500 matching based on the dollar for dollar, just taking you back up here. And then you could do it again the next year. And then you could do it again the next year if you still had catch up to do. The bonds, again, are significantly more simple, so those will catch up pretty quickly. The lifetime limit for grants and bonds is literally $70,000. The bonds is an additional 20. So again, if you're under that threshold of $30,000 a year in personal income, you can be taking home 90 grand from the government in grants in this RDSP. That is a lot. Yeah, so max catch up, specific list of instructions. Sorry, I'm going to come up with that for myself. Any other questions about it? I saw somebody raise a hand.
Yeah, I just want to clarify how to maximize the grants from the RDSP. Like, I'm 44.
Sure.
So I have like 5 years left to get the grants, right? So you're saying if I put $10,000 in each year until I turn 49, would that be maximizing the amount of grant I can get?
It doesn't matter how far you can open it, still claim grants going back as, yep. So that means that if you've got, like, it depends on what your date of disability effectively would have been, going back as far as 2008. So you would be able to claim.
It's 2006.
All right, perfect. I'm going to pull up a spreadsheet because I love spreadsheets. So we'll do 10,500 this year, 10,500, 10,500. Because what we would want is, sorry, I got to do this real quick. You would have, for 2008, you would have qualified for 1,000. 2009, the same, 2010, the same, 2011, and so on and so forth. So by the end of the day, nope. We're going to have basically 1,000 times, that'll be 14 years. So there'd be $14,000 worth of grant that you would be able to catch up on effectively. So you wouldn't want to put in the $10,500 every single year. You'd want to put in the 10,500 the first year. So if we're talking about 2022, you'd want to put 10,500 in to get your 10,500. And then in 2023, you would put in proportionately whatever's left. So that's the 4,000 plus your new money for that year. So you'd want to put in another 5,000 to qualify for 5,000. Does that make sense? Thanks for asking that question.
Yeah, so like it looks like the maximum grant I can get is 15,000.
15,500 right now. But then obviously you would still have every year going forward where you can qualify for additional grant.
Additional 5,000 or 1,000 each year until I turn 49.
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
That's not a bad deal.
I don't think so either. Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Good
So
question.
when I just turned 60, what would I qualify for?
Unfortunately, at 60, you won't be able to use the RDSP.
So not even the back pay?
No, no, because the grants are only available to age 49. And then after that, they won't apply for anything. So even then, I doubt that they would pay it. I'm going to actually clarify if any catch up is available. Sorry, that's a question for me. So I'm going to have to, to check in. I suspect no, because usually if they're only going to give grants to a certain age, it's the same thing. Like if I liken it to the RESP, the Education Savings Plan, in the year that the child turns 17, that's the last year to qualify for or apply for any grants. You can't go in at age 18 or 19 and say, hey, we didn't get it years before, we want to get it now. So I highly suspect it's a no, unfortunately.
So at this point, is there any credits at all for 60 years of age, or?
Not within the RDSP. Your disability tax credit, however, yes. So the DTC is still something that is good for you, like that you can definitely get at least tax money back on. And if you are at 60, I suspect you've probably been working at some point over the last 10 years. And if you weren't working, you were earning some sort of money that you probably had to pay tax on. So this amount would be something that would reduce your taxes going forward and help you save.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, good question. Anything else, guys?
Sorry, I just have another question. So you're saying the RDSP is better in terms of growing money than a TFSA?
Better. Okay, that's a loaded question. The RDSP is better because you have the grants coming in. The TFSA has its own benefits, which I'm going to jump into right now. So let's move on from the RDSP because I think we've gone into that at some length. Okay, so now we're going to talk about investing and accessing funds. So I'm going to kind of talk about these both at the same time. So the tax-free savings account is basically, I like the idea of it just being tax-free. I think that's really the most important part. It is not just a savings account. I think the TFSA is a bit of a misnomer. It should actually be thought of as a TF investing account, because anything that you put in there, again, all accounts, they're buckets. It's the best way to think of them. You can do anything you want within that bucket. So within a TFSA, it can be cash that's earning interest, which is usually what the banks will sell you on. You could have it in a Robo Advisor, like Wealthsimple and all that, that's coming out now. You could buy mutual funds in them. You could put GICs in them. It doesn't matter. The thing about the TFSA is it's tax-free in and it's tax-free out. So unlike the RDSP, where you have to pay tax at least on the growth amount of what you've earned in there, the TFSA is totally tax-free, no tax consequences. It also has none of the limits. So you can put money in until you die in the TFSA. They're like until you're 99, 100, whatever. There are no age rules on the TFSA. You can also take money out and put it in. The issue with the TFSA, though, that's going to be different from the RDSP is that it will qualify as an asset if you guys are looking at financial thresholds for benefits. So you got to be careful there. Again, the RDSP has that protection. So somebody was asking earlier about the benefit of doing this after 49 without getting the credits. You would want to use the RDSP if you're trying to hide money in there effectively. So to talk about investing, what you really want to be doing is putting away as much as possible, as quickly as possible. So I'm going to talk about dollar cost averaging very quickly. Dollar cost averaging is the idea of putting money regularly into the market being stocks, mutual funds, index funds, ETFs. I don't really want to get into crypto, but that can be part of your portfolio if you want it to be. The idea of dollar cost averaging is that the prices are going to go up and they're going to go down. If we're talking about stocks, like we're talking about pairs of shoes, sometimes you can buy those shoes for $50 a pair. Sometimes they're going to be $100 a pair. If you're putting in $200 every time, sometimes you're going to be able to get 4 pairs of shoes. Sometimes you're only going to get 2 pairs of shoes, sometimes 1, sometimes 6, and so on and so forth. By putting in the same number of dollars every time, you are buying more when things are cheap and less when things are expensive. This is really, really beneficial to your long-term investing plan in general. This can be done in RRSPs, it can be done in TFSAs, it can be done also in your RDSP. So going back to that concept of every month putting in $125, for example, or $85, that would be exactly what I'm talking about when I'm saying dollar cost averaging. In terms of an investment, so you've got to diversify. That is the first and most important thing I'm going to mention. A lot of people go and they pick a US dollar or a US index fund, or they're going to pick a cryptocurrency that's like all the rage right now. So that's the only reason I'm talking about it. What you want to do is, from a complex standpoint, develop a personal investment policy. That's if you're into the markets, if you're interested in investing yourself. Or the easiest thing to do is to pick a portfolio fund. 9 times out of 10, if you're going in and you're like walking into RBC or CIBC or something, and you talk to the guy at the front desk and you say, okay, I'm an average risk investor, they're going to say, here's a portfolio fund. Ta-da. A portfolio fund is something that has a big mix of different investments in it. It's all pre-managed for you. You don't have to think about it at all, which is my preferred way to invest for clients who aren't comfortable with or don't have the time to manage their own portfolio. I have Robo Advisors written in here. So Robo Advisors are like the new term. This is Wealthsimple, RBC Invest Ease, Nest Wealth, Quest Portfolio. There's a whole bunch of these guys out there. And those are, again, a portfolio fund, a big blend of different investments in it. That's all pre-managed for you and rebalanced and blah, blah, blah. And you don't have to do anything with it. Robo advisors are now just the less expensive version than the traditional mutual fund advisor giving you or selling you a portfolio fund. I want to show you really quick what a policy would look like. So here is a very complex one where you would pick, okay, this much percentage in US, this much in international, so on and so forth. And then you'd want to rebalance from there. This is a very simple one. I want 15% guaranteed, 50% mutual funds, 35% a different kind of mutual fund, and that's it. Your CFP or investment manager would be the person to handle this for you, or obviously you can take a stab at it yourself. I am including some information for you to do that. The big thing is, so everybody always says, watch out for fees. Your most expensive investments are going to come in from talking to the first person you see at the bank. Those guys usually are charging between 1.75 and 2.5%. A robo advisor, on the other hand, is charging you 0.7. So what that looks like is on $10,000, you're paying $27.50 versus $7.50. It's a pretty big difference over the course of the year in terms of how much you're paying for investment management. The important thing I want to highlight for you guys is flexibility. and accessibility. So this is where you want to make sure that your investments aren't locked in unless you guys are following the RDSP plan where you put it in and you just don't touch it for 10 years, as I was saying. Let's talk about accessing. Actually, before I jump into accessing, do you guys have any quick questions for me?
There's one that just came in. Would dividend stocks be an issue within a TFSA?
Would dividend what?
Dividend stocks. Am I reading
Oh,
that
dividend
right?
stocks be an issue. Oh no, you should actually own your dividend stocks inside of a TFSA. And the reason for that is that the dividend income that you are earning is not taxable if it's in a tax-free savings account. So you don't need to report the dividend income if it's in a tax-free account. So yeah, it's a great place to put it actually. Generally speaking, if you have income earning investments, you want to be in tax sheltered investments, which would be like your tax-free, your RRSP and so forth. So let's jump to accessing these funds. So the RRSP, a lot of people imagine that once money is in the RRSP, they can't touch it at all. That's not true. The rule of thumb behind an RRSP and a RIF, they're the same thing. The RIF is just I like to think of it as a Pokemon evolution. You know, you got your RRSP and then it evolves into a RIF and you have to withdraw it at that point. But the RRSP is just as accessible. So the difference is just taxation. When you pull money out of an RRSP, the whole thing is taxed. When you put money into an RRSP, none of it's taxed. So if you make $100,000 a year and you put $20,000 into an RRSP, the government's going to say, okay, we won't tax you on that 20 grand. However, later on, when you pull out that 20 grand, that is now going to be taxable. So the benefit here is if you happen to be putting in during working years, you get to save on tax. When you pull it out during non-working years, again, you're saving on tax because you're earning that much less. So the rule of thumb for any RRSP is really how much are you going to be making when you pull it out versus how much are you making when you put the money in. That's it. RRSPs are not that flexible because once you put it in, you lose contribution room. But you can pull it out. And again, you do not regain the contribution room. That is completely different from the tax-free savings account, where, as I said, you can take it in, put it out, take it out, put it in, and it's all totally repeatable. You can do this as many times as you want, just not within the same year, but we don't need to get into that. The next thing, I'm going to mention pensions and LIRAs. So probably some of you still have pensions. They aren't as popular as they were in the past, but if you have any pensions, any LAPP, anything like that, your pension plans are going to give you a couple of options when you retire. If it's an early retirement, or if it's just you leaving work, or if it's the proper planned retirement, whatever it is, you're going to have 3 different options. Option number 1 is just to take an actual pension income. So they're going to say, here's your calculated income. You're going to get it at this age. Go for it. The option number 2 is for you to transfer it into a locked in retirement account. So this would be basically like another RRSP or like another bucket where you get to decide how it's invested. The difference is that you can't pull in and take out. Like there's no accessibility there. The third option is for you to transfer it to a new pension plan, but I'm assuming you're probably not moving on to a new place of work, so you probably don't have a new pension. The thing about LIRAs that's really, really nice is that you can actually access them with medical need. So you have to put in a special form to the government of Alberta to access the money, but you can basically say, hey, this is medically necessary. At this point, I need to withdraw. Can I please access the money in my LIRA? And at that point, you will. Otherwise, your LIRA is going to basically become another form of pension income for yourself as you get older. We've already talked about the RDSPs and accessing those. So let me go back really quickly. I want to mention segregated funds just briefly because seg funds, that's a whole topic and they're very complicated, but to put it simply, you need to talk to an insurance agent about them. They are investments with an insurance wrapper on it, so you can get guarantees. They can be very, very easy for estate planning if you need them, and it's possible to get guaranteed income out of it. So that is another option for you to consider if you're looking at investing your money for yourself in the long term. Now, lastly, to ride us out here, let's talk about planning ahead. Obviously, quick pitch to get retirement projections. Please talk to a financial planner, a retirement consultant, someone like myself who will put together retirement projections. The power of this is really knowing how much you have to live on, how much you can withdraw, how long these funds will last. This answers a lot of questions and takes a lot of stress off your plate so you're not wondering if you can afford all the things you want to afford. The other thing I'm going to mention is the longer you can defer your withdrawals. So if you can live on government benefits, if you can work a little bit for a while so that you are not needing to use your investments, all that time adds to the power of exponential growth. If you're making 2, 3, 7% every single year on your investments, but you are eating into your investments, that growth becomes less and less. So the longer you can defer it, the more money you will have in the end to help for yourself. The other thing I suggest is a health plan. I know a health planning specialist in particular who designs how to stay at home, how to move into a facility, and which professionals to bring in. Again, I'm a planner. The more you can plan, I think the more peace of mind you get to live with. The next thing that Emma actually brought up was finding an estate planner. So I was going to suggest a power of attorney. Power of attorney, if you don't have this in place already, is a legal document that gives somebody else the ability to make financial decisions on your behalf. They can access all your accounts, they can sell your house. So this is a big decision. You want to make sure it's somebody that you trust, that has the same interests as you do. In many cases, people choose several powers of attorney so that they have perhaps all 3 children or something making decisions on their behalf rather than one person to prevent financial mistreatment. The personal health directive, if you guys don't already have one, I've included a link. There's you can literally fill in a quick form with the government, or again, deal with this with an estate planner. I myself had a lawyer do all of the documents, including a will, and I got to be very specific around my instructions. So a health directive is somebody who, or your attorney rather, who chooses your healthcare and your lifestyle, what facility you're going to be in, what nursing you're going to receive, who can see you. All of those decisions would be made by the person named in your personal health directive. Do you guys have any questions around that? None?
None that I'm seeing here, no.
All right, okay. So then just to close it out, you guys, the last piece that I want to leave you with really has to do with just basic empowerment around your everyday cash flow. This is the simplest thing I do with every single client, no matter how wealthy, and every single one of them comes back to me and goes, wow, that was such a smart thing to do. I can't believe I did it sooner. So what I would suggest you do is look at 3 months of your spending. Very easy to do these days because everybody has statements. You pull out 3 months of bank statements, credit card statements, anything else that you're spending on, and you average out how much does it cost me to do groceries? How much do my meds cost me? How much does therapy cost me? How much does my dog cost me? All of those different things so that you know exactly what you're spending every month. This allows you to also develop target plans. So thinking about retirement projections are only as good as the data you put in. So if you come and you tell me, oh, I spend like $3,000-$4,000 a month, but in reality you're spending $6,000, it's a pretty big difference in terms of the actual success rate you're going to see in your long-term retirement plan and how well that's going to work for you. The other thing is this allows you to plan for additional costs. So if you're spending $5,000 today, is additional healthcare going to cost you another $2,000, for example? So you do need to be ready for $7,000 a month. And then lastly, one of my favorite sayings ever is watch your cents and the dollars will take care of themselves. So those small things that I was talking about in terms of even just saving on fees in your retirement plan, for example, in your investments, if you can save a little bit every time, then at the end of the day, you will have more in your accounts. So I think that's time. I would love to keep going. I'm not going to kick you off, but I think Emma will. So if you guys have any other questions, feel free to fire them my way. As I said, I'm going to put this together so that you can, Emma will forward it off to you guys. And then I will answer some of those good questions that you left me with and just clarify it for you guys.
I have a quick question for you regarding GICs, the way that the markets are going right now. Would you suggest locking in like for 5-year terms right now?
For GICs? Oh, absolutely not. No. Okay, wow. I'm really glad you asked that. If you are going to be looking at interest earning investments, you want to go only short term or only floating. The reason for that is interest rates are going up. So if you choose a 5-year GIC, for example, very quickly, you're going to be able to get a new 5-year GIC for more interest. So this will actually cost you in the long term. What I have here in terms of cash GIC high interest savings is it's a good idea in your investment portfolio to have 1 year that's just in cash and the rest is in the market and invested. And the reason for that is because, as you've seen over the last 2 years, it's been going up and down the whole time, and you don't want to pull money out when the markets are low.
Right. Okay.
Does that answer your question?
It does. And also, when you have like a 1-year investment, for instance, whether it's GIC or anything else, with your monthly, would you suggest having withdrawals, if withdrawing your interest on a monthly basis or do it at an annual basis? What's the best way to do something like that?
In terms of withdrawal, if you're looking at just creating income, honestly, I would probably do it on the monthly basis, especially because of the pricing of the market right now. If you are withdrawing slowly over time, first of all, if you take it out at the beginning of the year, you lose out on a whole year's worth of growth on that chunk of money. It's the same idea like dollar cost averaging, but backwards, right? You don't want to sell everything at a specific price. You can kind of sell it slowly over the year in order to supplement your income.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions? Like I said, I'm not kicking you out. This is all on Emma.
Yeah, we do have another speaker set at 7, so we
gotta
will
go.
take a break on questions. If anyone has any more questions, please feel free to email me and I can pass them along to you if that's okay. And
Absolutely.
I will, once I get this document, I will send it out to everyone here tonight so you can take another look at it and have access to those links. So thank you again for joining us. It was very informative.
Thanks for all the questions, guys. I hope this was good for you too.